You're listening to Brunch with me, Noreen Mir, on this Friday morning. Now, let's turn to the next part of today's program. In the next 20 minutes or so, we have the pleasure of speaking with two inspiring leaders from Splash Foundation Hong Kong, which is a local charity that believes everyone should have the chance to learn to swim. And to tell us more, I'm really delighted to be joined by their CEO and co-founder, Libby Alexander, along with Roy Pang, who is the board chair. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having us.
We are also live this morning on Facebook, so I'd love for our listeners to be viewers. Hop onto Facebook if you can. Noreen Mir on RTHK Radio 3. So, Libby, ladies first. Maybe I'll start off with you. Let's rewind and go back to the beginning. Where did the idea of Splash come from?
Well, Splash started in 2015, and it really kind of grew quite organically. So we started teaching a group of domestic workers, and I think anecdotally we realized that many of them didn't know how to swim, and once we started speaking to them, they've never had the chance to learn how to swim. So it was really a group of swimmers, and we sort of put together a class, and we sort of did our best to teach them. And I think in those first few months, we learned three things really quickly. One, it was not that difficult if you have a good program to teach someone kind of the basics of water confidence and water safety. But two, just watching the change in the women over the course of the program and just how their confidence grew, how their self-esteem grew, that was really quite magical to see. And then three, also just watching how they interacted with each other. They're kind of going through this super scary experience with each other and sort of seeing how they're kind of developing this social network. And so it's kind of number 2 and 3 was really the magic of Splash. And we realized we've kind of stumbled on something and that we really needed to kind of grow this and offer it to more people.
Yeah, I'm so glad you highlighted water confidence and safety, because it's quite daunting for some people who haven't had the opportunity to swim, but it really comes down to their self-esteem and their self-confidence. So now you've expanded. Apart from working with migrant workers, what other communities do you serve?
Yeah, I think the more we learned about swim literacy rates, both around the world and in Hong Kong, the more that we sort of realize that there are many different barriers to people learning how to swim. Most often it's economic and financial because swim lessons can be expensive, but there's also cultural barriers, there are physical barriers. So over the years, we've just started looking at learning to swim more broadly and, figuring out which groups of people haven't had the opportunity to learn for whatever reason and how can Splash help them. So we have expanded to kids from low-income families. We then started with a grant from the Jockey Club to work with kids with special educational needs because oftentimes they're kind of left behind when it comes to learning how to swim. And then most recently, we've started teaching the parents with the kids from low-income families, because we realize the parents are bringing the kids to these lessons, but they don't know how to swim. So if we give them 20 hours of swim lessons, but no one in that family is able to bring them to a pool after swimming is done, what's the likelihood they'll remember it? So we're now teaching the parents too.
Yeah. Roy, welcome to the program. Thank you for being with us today. So how did you start? Tell us about the beginning. How were you roped into Splash?
Actually, it's a funny story. So I grew up as a swimmer as I was a kid. And, when I was swimming, we lived in a world where it's always about, swimming faster and faster and faster. So did a lot of training, grew up around here, around Broadcast Drive. So, this is a familiar neighborhood to me. Thank you for having me back. And stopped swimming for a long time, but always retained my connection to it. And, I think a couple of years back, I came across Splash. Simon Holliday, who's co-founder together with Libby, really inspired me. He was one of the first swimmers to swim solo around Hong Kong Island by himself, so 45 kilometers. I was like, this is a guy I really want to meet. And the other thing I noticed about, Splash Foundation and something that, was close to my heart was, I think that there is a huge opportunity to significantly increase this amazing program to the local community. I learned from Simon and Libby that, half of Hong Kong doesn't know how to swim, which is a shocking statistic to me, but partly because there's no mandatory swim program. There are, universities and schools don't necessarily say you can't graduate without being able to swim 50 meters. And so people just don't think about it. So in a way, I kind of cold called them. They took they took a meeting. We had maybe a 2-hour breakfast, and went from there. And I felt very strongly that if there's a way for us to sort of bring together more local resources to support Splash and their program, it's something that the community would really react well to.
Yeah, that's great. It started with a cold call, and that's brilliant. That's proactiveness. What sorts of plans do you have to expand for in the coming years then?
Sure, thank you. One of the things I think we do very well is, it's a wonderful program. It focuses on swimming safety and confidence first. Whereas when we were kids growing up, it was always about go faster, go faster, go faster. And I think, even with some of the elite swimmers that I was fortunate enough to swim with, they've never enjoyed it that much. So Splash really teaches the enjoyment first and foremost. The way I think about, how we grow this community in Hong Kong is, we have a lot of underutilized resources. So Hong Kong actually has some of the largest number of pools per capita amongst major cities. The question is how they're used. Very often they're used for school teams, very often they're used for swimming clubs to train the elite athletes. But oftentimes, for Sundays or whatever it is, they're very underutilized. So how do we bring good pool partners into the fold? Secondly, how do we engage with local communities so that, parents will bring their children, so that, domestic helpers will sign up? It's very much sort of how do you boost that confidence that I'm going to try something that I've never done. So to what Libby was saying, I think one of the second things we've come across, which is, in my mind, gold dust, is this topic of the parent-child connection. So very often parents are very stressed out. They want their kids to succeed. They want their kids to, after they pay money for a swimming lesson, they want their kids to swim 50 meters within 30 seconds after 1 year, right? Very often the kids can't do that, and the parents get stressed and the kids get stressed. So by actually allowing parents to do it together with their children is a very unifying bonding experience, and something that we believe is a wonderful sort of formula for the future, because it strengthens the parent-child bond. It allows the parents to really empathize with their children's journey. And sometimes actually, I would toss it the other way around, the children learn to support their parents and teach their parents what they've learned. And I think the dynamic that you get from that in today's world, where I think communication is harder than before, it just makes it such an amazing experience.
Yeah. That really touches my heart, and it makes me think maybe many parents actually didn't have the opportunity to learn how to swim themselves. Perhaps it's cultural, perhaps it's generational, but swimming was just not that prioritized, I think. If I think back to perhaps my own family, my mum can't swim, my grandma can't swim, so therefore I'd be the first generation of the lot to learn how to swim.
It really is generational. So I think there was some statistic posted recently, if your parent doesn't know how to swim, you're 80% likely that you will never learn how to swim. So it just gets passed down generation to generation.
Yeah.
And it's funny that it's a good way to, in a way, break the curse. And again, it comes back down to, I think, aligning interests, right? So, I think for some of the Splash programs nowadays, we say to the kids, if your parent signs up, then you can come. And actually from the parents' perspective, again, because these are free, classes, they're very aligned to say, okay, well, if I really want free classes for my kid to learn, I then have to do it myself. And actually the change it makes in adults is, in my mind, even starker, because they have to really go outside their comfort zone for the first time in decades. I mean, they're probably great at their job, they're probably, very good workers, but to learn something that is so scary for the first time in their lives, and doing it with a child makes it very meaningful.
I suppose so. I suppose learning how to swim we're very lucky. I assume we all learn how to swim as a kid, and we have less sort of parameters. We're less concerned about safety. But as an adult, I'm sure, it's a scary experience. What sorts of feedback do you get from the parents, or maybe from adult swimmers learning how to swim for the first time?
They are incredibly scared going in the pool the first time. But again, I think, like Libby was saying, we have these groups of parents, and they're learning next to their groups of kids. And I think that they are nervous, anxious, but also hopeful. And I think as the lessons progress, and again, we promote safety and confidence first and foremost. Because I think if you're not safe and not confident, forget about trying to swim 25 meters. And I think at the end of the classes, when they graduate and we get to congratulate them and talk to them, I think the feedback is very consistent, which is I never thought I had the opportunity to do this as a 30, 40-year-old, number one. And number two, I can't believe I did this for myself at this stage in life. And then the question is, what's next, right? I mean, now I can take my kids to the beach. Now I can take my kids to the pool. Now we can actually explore a lot of interesting things that Hong Kong has to offer that were previously off limits.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I also know you have an upcoming event coming up on the 8th of November, Make Waves for Hong Kong. Libby, can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Sure. Talk about stepping outside of your comfort zone. What I love about this event is, and we try to do this with all of our events, of trying to, bring the community into it. It's not just a fundraising event. It really is about sharing this message about access to the water. And once you learn how to swim, how that impacts your well-being in the long term, and just making sure that everyone has that opportunity. So, we have 30 swimmers who are going to be swimming in 5 relay teams around Hong Kong Island. So that's 45 kilometers. It will take them about 12 hours. And there's a lot of scary parts of this. I mean, we've got, I think what I love about this event is that we bring together a range of swimmers. So we have elite swimmers. We have former Olympic swimmers for Hong Kong, Jeff Chia and Hannah Wilson. But we also have people that are relatively new to swimming. So we have Josephine Tolentino, who is actually a Splash graduate. She's a domestic worker here in Hong Kong. And she will be, on one of the teams. So it's a real range. And then a lot of swimmers in between who might be regular pool swimmers, but they've never swam open water. So everyone's doing something a little bit new on this one. So they swim for 30 minutes at a time, and they, change over. And I think what I love about this event is just kind of watching everyone. It almost replicates a splash class, right? You put yourself in an environment with a group of people who you don't know, and you do something that you're not exactly sure what the outcome's going to be, right? So it's that same kind of wonderful experience. Watching that journey, it very much mimics a splash class.
Yeah, and what about the training process for this? Because it's not just sort of swimming for 30 minutes on the day. You've got to really train the stamina.
Yeah.
What's that been like?
Yeah, so we help organize. So we put the teams together. I mean, we've been forming the teams for a while, and then sort of in September, we told them that they needed to start training on their own, and a lot of the training they have to do on their own. And then we organize a number of group swims since September. We've done some night swims because we have to start at 2 a.m. In order to get through the harbor before the boat traffic starts. So all of them will be swimming. All of their segments will be in the evening or at night in the dark. So we've done some night swim practices, and getting them used to swimming in rough water. So every swimmer will probably swim about 3 or 4 times during the 12-hour period. So, a lot of prep.
Amazing. You have a goal of raising $3.5 million. How will the funds generated be used to help some of the people that you're serving?
Yeah, so all the funds from this is our major annual fundraising event. So all of the funds that raised through this go directly to support our programs. So Splash has grown over the years. We now teach over 3,000 people, about 3,300 people a year are enrolled in Splash classes. We've got over 1,000 enrolled in the moment in our fall term. So lots of programs, lots of communities that we're helping, and this event sort of makes that all possible.
Yeah, I also love that you collaborate with elite swimmers and business leaders. Did they take much persuading, or were they like, this is their calling?
They jumped into it.
With both feet. Yeah, it's great.
I think it's interesting because for a lot of the elite swimmers or the business leaders, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. I mean, how many people have had that opportunity before? But I think, more interestingly, they all have a very personal connection and reason to do this. So, last year I was lucky enough to do it. So I had to train a lot because I was probably by far the worst swimmer on my team. I swam with a couple of Olympians, and their feedback to me was, we've been training all our lives to go as fast as we possibly can, and we were pushed very, very hard once we realized we had a talent. But it's only after coming and seeing some of these splash classes and the impact it has on people that we realize how meaningful it was for us to give our skill to something that was completely, for charity and for the community. And that they almost sort of went so far to say, actually, to swim around Hong Kong Island, this is one of the most enjoyable swimming experiences they've ever had.
Yeah,
Exactly.
wow.
Swimming for fun, yeah.
Exactly.
Because when did they have the opportunity to really sort of do that and do it in a very fun sort of communal environmental way. And then the second thing I would say to that is I just think that it really brings the community together from our splashers, who learn from us. But it actually really brings the volunteer community together as well. So one of the reasons how Splash has stayed, very sustainable financially, we rely on the help of our foundations and donors, but actually for a lot of the teachers, they are actually our splashers from before. And they feel this strong sense of, I learned how to swim through Splash. I want to give back and be a volunteer teacher, a volunteer coach. And we get a lot of, empathy within the community, because the teachers will say to the students, we were in that position. We were that scared. So, come, we'll help you. And it just helps to really get everyone on the same page. Because I think a lot of swimmers, when they first start, they're just so scared, but the teacher's elite. And so you have that massive divide. So, I think it's one of the things that I really enjoy, which is sort of seeing this alignment of interest between the different stakeholders and everyone sort of trying to evolve and grow in the same way.
Yeah. How can people become splashers, or how can people volunteer their time and ability with Splash?
Yeah, I'd say that, the two three biggest ways for people that we always tell people, we need money, we need pools, and we need volunteer coaches. So, for people that are confident swimmers, comfortable in the water, it is not that difficult for us to train you how to teach someone else. And so we've got over 150 volunteer coaches at any given time. It's quite a large network. We're always looking for new pool partners. As Roy said, Hong Kong has no shortage of swimming pools. It's just about convincing schools to open their doors and have those pools benefit the community. And then finally, funds to help pay for our staff and running these programs.
Yeah, and how can our listeners find out a little bit more about Splash? Are you
Sure.
on social media?
Yeah, so splashfoundation.org. If they go to our website, and there's a Make Waves event page, and we're also on Instagram, Splash Foundation Limited, and Facebook. So.
And LinkedIn as well.
LinkedIn as well.
All channels of communication is open. Thank you so much, Libby and Roy. And that is Libby Alexander, the CEO and the co-founder, along with Roy Pang, who is the board chair. Thank you so much for sharing your insights, and keep making waves. Best of luck for the 8th. And I'm sure our listeners will go onto the website. You can still support the teams. 5 teams, I believe.
5 teams, yep.
Head on to splashfoundation.org to find out more about it. Thank you so much for your time, Libby and Roy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Noreen.
And now a quick look at the weather forecast for today. It'll be mainly fine and very dry at first, becoming cloudy with 1 or 2 showers.